Hi besties, welcome back to my channel. I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's literally already August, so let's do a July wrap up and let me talk about the books that I read in July. So I've read 10 books in the month of July, 8 of them being romances, 1 being a thriller slash mystery, and 1 was fiction. So I only have 3 in hand today because I went really crazy with my Kindle this month, but that's okay. That just means I'm getting my Kindle membership. I'm just using it well. So let's get into the books that I read. First, I started the month by finishing up the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. And this one honestly kind of didn't do it for me like every other Abby Jimenez book normally does. So if you didn't know, Abby Jimenez has 2 different series that are all kind of interconnected standalones. So this one is actually book 2 to the Friend Zone interconnected standalone series. This book we're following Sloane, who is the best friend of the female main character in book 1, The Friend Zone. In the friend zone, something tragic happens, and in book 2, we get to dive deeper into that tragic accident that happened to her in book 1. Basically, her fiance passes away in a tragic motorcycle accident a few days or maybe weeks before their wedding. And so this book is Sloane navigating relationship after loss. The start of the book, she is obviously still grieving and heavily depressed. I think it's about 2 years past the date of his death, when Sloane finds Tucker, which is our male main character Jason's dog, and she takes him in and tries her best to get in contact with the owner, who is Jason, also known as Jackson Waters, as he is a musician. And then eventually she finally gets in contact with them and they start talking and they realize that they have a lot in common and that they kind of like each other. So the rest of the book is basically this relationship navigating not only loss but also a relationship with a musician and someone who is very heavily in the spotlight. I really did love this book, don't get me wrong. I love when a book's main character, either one, is like some kind of famous person. I really like it. I think it's a interesting topic and kind of fun and refreshing to see in romance books besides just normal everyday jobs. I did give it 4 stars because, like I said, I could literally read Abby Jimenez's grocery list and be happy, because the way she creates the characters and the banter that she writes, the way she really just gets you into the character's mind is so amazing. The plot was still really good. It just wasn't overall my favorite Abby Jimenez book. Next, I actually read 2 novellas on my Kindle. It is a series of different meet cute novellas that a bunch of different authors wrote, and they're exclusively for Amazon. And what's so special about these meet cutes is that they all take place on February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, but you don't have to read them in order. They're not interconnected or anything like that. So I started off with The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. This pleasantly surprised me. I'm not a big novella girl and I don't really know why I picked these up, but they just looked super interesting to me. And I'm so glad I picked this one up because it was literally so good for like a 100-page book. Basically, in this one, on Valentine's Day, our male main character accidentally emails a student that goes to the same district as him in his like school area, thinking that it's his professor. Our female main character actually replies to him saying that he had got the email address wrong by a single typo, and then they start talking about their Valentine's Day and their plans. And then each chapter is actually set up as each February 14th, and the chapters read as you're like reading the emails. So basically it's just a series of emails for practically the whole book until you get to the end. But with that being said, each chapter is each February 14th of them trying to get back in touch with each other and just wish each other a happy Valentine's Day. And it starts to become this tradition that they have together, and each time they start talking about their day and what they're planning on doing or how it went. And we follow this through high school all the way to college. The trick is in this novella is that they have very harsh rules when they're emailing each other. One, they don't say their real names, so it's just like C dot like their last name or something, like C dot and then like the first 3 letters of their last name or something like that. They don't say what actual school they go to. They don't say what their parents' names are, their siblings. They don't end up telling each other what college they go to. And so this proves to be very difficult when they actually meet. Yeah, overall, this was such a good novella. I was kind of like upset that it wasn't longer, to be honest. They read it especially fast because you're basically just reading emails. So half the page is already gone through the setup of how the layout is. Like I said, I gave it 4 stars, and I think my only gripe with this book is that it wasn't longer. I really loved these characters, and Christina Lauren did a really great job of getting you super connected with the characters so fast. But yeah, that's literally my only gripe. I wish it was longer. I really think that this could have been a full-length book. Next on the novellas, I read The Worst Wingman Ever by Abby Jimenez. This is the second meet cute in the series, and we follow Holly, who is a nurse for her dying grandmother. One day when she's leaving her building, she sees that there's a note on her windshield, and she looks at it and realizes that it was actually meant for another woman on Valentine's Day. She totally disregards it, and the next day when she is at her grandmother's complex apartment, the man who put the note there for his friend, aka the wingman, noticed her car and wrote a "I'm sorry" letter and stuck it on there for her to see. And that is the premise of the whole novella. They keep writing these notes to each other using Holly's car as the middleman, and eventually the meet cute is that she realizes that the handyman of her grandmother's complex apartment is actually the wingman. I ended up giving this novella only 2 stars. Like I said, I really don't like novellas. I think that they are too short and can come across very artificial because the authors are really trying to make it quick. And I think Abby Jimenez really missed the mark on this one because I think the premise was super cute and obviously very different than any other kind of rom-com. But I think where it went south for me was that the grandmother dying and her being like her nurse was like bigger than the actual meet cute itself, which isn't necessarily bad. Like, I'm not saying I hate that, but by the end of the book when they meet, it's like the last chapter and you're not getting much from them together. And so I think that her being her grandmother's nurse could have just been shortened a little bit in order to heighten the romance in the book. Okay, next I read The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. After I read that meet cute, I literally needed more Christina Lauren because I love Love in Other Words. But I was like, this one is really popular, let's read this one. And unfortunately though, this one kind of fell flat for me, and I feel like I'm being very harsh. So if this rating changes, just know this rating might change. I gave it 2.5 stars, which feels very harsh because I finished it, and I feel like if I didn't really like it, I wouldn't have finished it. But something just really missed the mark with me on this one. I gotta tell you guys what it's about. So this book is about Olive, who is a twin sister to Amy, and Amy is getting married on a all expense paid wedding because she is super lucky. And so Olive is the bridesmaid, and Ethan, our male main character, is the best man to the fiance, the husband. I don't even remember his name. He is like a very small character. It's some kind of abbreviation like BJ or something. Eventually everyone gets sick from the catering of, I think, fish, besides Ethan and Olive, who actually despise each other. And Amy takes it upon herself to tell Olive to take her honeymoon in place of her, since they are twins and they look very similar, because the honeymoon is all expense paid. They can't change the date. They can't have anyone else go in her place. So Olive and Amy decide that Olive will go and act as if she is Amy. But on the other hand, Ethan also didn't get sick, and it was a trip for 2, and so Ethan tags along after much debate with Olive because, again, they don't really like each other. When they get to this private resort, they have to act like they are married. Then it turns out that they both run into someone from their real life. Olive runs into her new boss, and Ethan runs into his ex-fiance, I'm pretty sure. And so now this whole fake dating trope goes past fake dating in front of the hotel staff, and now it's more heightened because they have to do it in front of these people that they know in real life. And honestly, we know where the fake dating trope goes from there. And so that is pretty much the premise. If there's one thing about me, I love the fake dating trope, but this one just kind of fell flat for me. I think the way they hated each other was super childish. Like, I think it just wasn't well done. I think I gave it a 2 stars also just because this book has been around on Book Talk for so long and is so heavily loved and so heavily hyped. So I went in really thinking that I was gonna love it. And maybe that's where I went wrong because my expectations were really just like squashed with this one. I just felt like the relationship was super forced, which obviously it's fake dating, but the banter wasn't great and it just felt very childish to me all around. So only 2.5, but honestly, I feel like it's teetering on a 3 because I do think some people would really like it. It just wasn't for me. Next, I finally read a physical book. This is Summer Romance by Annabelle Monaghan. This was another book that I went in with super high expectations and kind of didn't really get what everyone was getting from the book. I ended up giving this one a 3 stars because I think it was just perfect middle of the road, cute, but also funny rom-com. So my dog literally chewed the hell out of it. I'm not gonna talk about it. In this one, we follow Allie, who is recently separated, trying to get divorced from her husband, and Ethan, who is a town runaway, I guess. He's a lawyer who escaped this small town. The two actually meet at a dog park, which if the book has a dog, I'm immediately in, and the dog actually pees on him, and they start to get talking. Allie realizes that she should start putting herself out there post-divorce. Later to find out that Ethan is actually her best friend's brother, also known as Scooter from her childhood, and Scooter is this unreliable, super childish young boy in her mind. And so now that she knows Ethan and she knows Scooter, things start to become kind of wishy-washy for her. To be honest though, that like first initial like, oh, you're Scooter, not Ethan, kind of was like really overlooked in the book. Like I think the author kind of started that and then just kind of dropped it, which was kind of annoying to me. But yeah, I really love this book. I think the characters were great. Ethan was a great anchor and support system for Allie throughout the book and actually helps her with her divorce with her husband. I really loved how this book tackled grief and marriage and divorce and her finding herself in her new self-identity without a husband. The author did an amazing job tackling this and really making the reader root for her the whole time, and you really just want her to succeed in this relationship. So all around, very cute, very funny, perfect little rom-com for summer. And just when you thought you couldn't get enough Abby Jimenez in a month, I finished the Abby Jimenez MCU, the AJCU, if you will, the Abby Jimenez Cinematic Universe. So I read Life's Too Short, which is the 3rd book in the interconnected standalone series. In this one, we're following Adrian Copeland, who is actually a cameo in either the 1st or the 2nd book. One of the 2 female main characters goes on a brief date with him. And so now he's returning in the 3rd book as the male main character. Then we also have Vanessa Price, who is a famous travel YouTuber who also supports ALS and funds a lot of money through ALS. Unfortunately, Vanessa's YouTube career is kind of put on a pause when her sister leaves her newborn baby at her door. And that's when our 2 characters meet. In the middle of the night, Vanessa cannot get the baby to stop crying, and Adrian takes it in himself to go over there and help her out and let her take a shower while he takes care of the baby and finds the reason why the baby wouldn't stop crying. Obviously, this gesture is a crazy gesture in its own, and so Vanessa was obviously hooked, and the 2 eventually obviously get together. This proves to be a very big challenge for Vanessa because, like I said earlier, she supports ALS, but she also knows that this genetic disease runs in her family, and she has vowed to not really let herself or anyone get attached to her in a relationship way because she may end up dying within the next couple of years, just like her sister. This book was so good. I gave it 4.5 stars just because of that little miscommunication trope throughout the whole book. Like I said, I really can't stand miscommunication, but this one honestly wasn't too terribly bad, so it was definitely doable. The thing about Adrian in this book, he was so good. I think it was like the little acts of kindness that he did. The only reason I did give it 5 is because yours truly is like the best. So like I was kind of comparing the 2, which maybe I shouldn't do. Yeah, our heroine in it, Vanessa, is literally just so amazing. She is so funny. She is so down to earth. The ending of this book, it felt kind of rushed, but you get a happy ending. So what more can you really ask for, especially because I love these characters and I didn't want to see the end of them at all. Again, I'll read anything Abby Jimenez puts out there. Let's get into this one. Let's get into this one, shall we? Oh my god. I literally can't even talk about this one because I'm gonna freak out. I'm gonna start crying because I miss it already. I miss this book. Obviously, if you watch my 24-hour readathon, you know that I gave this 5 stars. If I could give it a galaxy gajillion million stars, I would. In this one, we're following Daphne, who was supposed to be getting married to Peter, but Peter eventually falls in love with Petra, which is his childhood best friend, leaving Daphne with nowhere to go. So she meets up with Petra's ex, who is Miles, our male main character, and they start living together. And the two normally don't really hang out until one night. They get to drinking and talking, and eventually the invitation to Peter and Petra's wedding is seen during this drunk fiasco, and Miles has the bright idea to RSVP to it in order for them to look like they have moved on and that they're not as sad as they actually are about it. The next morning, Daphne wakes up and gets a call from Peter asking why she RSVP'd, leaving her to realize that her and Miles had done some crazy stuff while they were drunk. The lie gets deeper while she's on the phone with Peter, and she says, yeah, like, I'm going with Miles, like, we're a date. He's not my plus one, we're a date. And leading up to the wedding, they start taking the fake dating trope crazy. They start posting pictures together, they start actually hanging out, and the rest is just... If you don't read any other Emily Henry book, let it be this one, please, please, please. Like I said in my last video, I wasn't a big fan of Emily Henry until now. Until freaking now, baby. Happy Place really did it for me. I'm pretty sure I gave it like 5 stars. But this one was like just so different than any of the other Emily Henry books I've read. I think she's definitely grown as an author and just keeps getting better and better. The banter in this book is seriously unmatched. I thought that these characters were like the funniest people on earth. Like, they were genuinely funny, had me kicking my feet laughing. Like, that's so embarrassing. Imagine reading a book in public and literally giggling at it. The one thing that I really loved about this book is that Emily Henry touched on dependency in relationships and how Daphne was a we person in her relationship with Peter, but how Miles actually allows her to kind of shine on her own and be an I person. If you don't want to talk about we and I, like, I don't really know how to explain it. Read the book and they'll explain it for you perfectly. Like in a lot of romances, authors can write their female main character to be very dependent on a male main character. And although like it's not intentional, it happens quite often. And so this was very, very refreshing to read. And I just loved it so much. And if I keep talking, this video is gonna be 2 hours long. So just know this was my favorite read of the month and maybe even the year. We'll see. Next, I read Never Lie as part of my 24-hour readathon by Frida McFadden. This book, we followed Trisha and Ethan. Is this the 4th male main character named Ethan? Wait, are we serious right now? Was this just an Ethan month for me? Oh my god. Never Lie, The Unhoneymooners, and Summer Romance. They're all named Ethan. This is insane. I hate that. I literally hate that. Can we as authors, I'm an author, can authors stop naming men these generic ass names? 3 times being named Ethan is not a coincidence, and we need to talk about that. That's terrible. Anyways, Never Lie, we're following Trisha and Ethan as newlyweds searching for their house together. They're actually on their way to view a house that they were very interested in when it starts to snowstorm, and the only way they can seek shelter is to go into said house in hopes that their realtor will be there in a couple of hours. Of course, they're snowed in, the realtor never came, and Trisha's having these really weird gut feelings that there's something wrong with the house or something bad happened in the house. So this house actually belongs to the missing Dr. Hale, who is a world-renowned psychiatrist and an author of a book about her psychiatry work. And Trisha actually finds Dr. Hale's recordings with her patients. And of course, since she's trapped there and she's trying to take her mind off of these weird events that are happening in this creepy house, she listens to the tapes and gets a better knowledge of her disappearance. And things start to unravel and things start to happen. I don't really want to spoil it, and I feel like maybe I should stop there. But I was genuinely very surprised with this Frida McFadden book. I'm normally not the biggest fan of her thrillers. The only reason I actually picked this one up was because I knew I'd finish it in a good amount of time for my 24-hour readathon, but I was pleasantly surprised and ended up rating it 3 stars. This book was very different than any of the other Frida McFadden books I've read. This book really captures you and gets you sucked in. Like, you want to know what's happening as soon as the book starts. It's also really cool how it's dual POV between our main character Trisha and Dr. Hale, and then there's also a couple of chapters that debrief the recording that Trisha is listening to. Next up, I read The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. And this book is actually a Groundhog's Day trope specifically set on Valentine's Day, which apparently I was interested in Valentine's Day books this month, literally in July. I don't know why. So in this book, we're following Emily, who is in high school. So this is a YA book. We're following her on Valentine's Day as someone who genuinely really loves Valentine's Day and is dating Josh. However, although she loves Valentine's Day, her day starts off really bad. She gets into a wreck, and then a bunch of these really weird happenings start happening to her. She finds Josh cheating, and her Valentine's Day just goes upside down immediately. She goes back home and goes to sleep. She wakes up and realizes that it's Valentine's Day again, and she just goes through the same cycle over and over again until one of the Valentine's Days, she decides to make one of her Valentine's Day a DONC, which is Day of No Consequences, and she starts to use this time loop into her favor. She starts being very reckless and very opposite of who she actually is in real life. This leads her to become friends with Nick, and they share this incredible day of no rules, breaking all the rules, and eventually when she goes to sleep that night on the DONC day, she wakes up and it's actually February 15th and realizes all of her actions had consequences. This book was super cute. Again, I love Lynn Painter a lot. I'm not normally a YA girly, but when it comes to Lynn Painter, I'll pick up the book because I love the way she writes YA. I already said this in my 24-hour readathon video, but I think YA for me is just a little bit too childish, and I think the way older authors write young adult, there's like just a huge disconnect and it can get really cringy, but Lynn Painter is actually very, very good at writing YA. I also hate the Groundhog's Day trope. I normally hate it so much, but Lynn Painter did a good job of not like dragging it out, even though that's kind of the whole premise of a time loop. This was just so cute and encapsulates young love so well. The characters are super sweet and have a very great chemistry, good banter. All around just super cute and super fun to follow, especially the last day when she's getting into a bunch of nonsense and crazy stuff. It's super fun to see how that day unfolds, and you kind of go in as a reader knowing that you might not wake up, and so that's also just super funny to follow along with. Last but not least, I read Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. I actually listened to this one on audiobook, and the reader did a very great job with this. In this book, we're following June, also known as Juniper Song, who is friends with Athena Liu, an Asian American author who has great success in her role. Right off the bat, it is set up that June is super jealous of her friend Athena. However, they start hanging out one night to celebrate the Netflix deal that Athena has made for her new book. And then in a pancake eating contest, Athena actually starts choking on a pancake, and despite June trying to do her best to save her, Athena eventually dies. So right off the bat, that happens in like the first couple of chapters, and I was already gripped in so well. The author did a very good job of making the audience really want to know what's going on. But while she was there, Athena had shown her a new novel that she was working on. And after all these events unfold, June thinks that she should take it upon herself to take this very wonderful and amazing piece of work and help publish it. The book that she steals is about the contributions of the Chinese laborers during World War I, and she basically takes it and kind of rewrites it predominantly to make it her own, but technically the plot and the characters are still Athena's. And of course, this book is a huge hit. It does very, very well, but then this obviously really starts to hit June close to home as she starts to feel very guilty for the things that she's done, and she starts being haunted by Athena's ghost. So this whole time, June is trying to keep her secret, but she's starting to feel really bad, and someone is presenting to be Athena's ghost and threatening her to come out and tell everyone what she has done. I really, really, really enjoyed this one. I read it super fast. I gave it 4 stars. The author did a really good job of raising my attention right off the bat. As soon as Athena died, I needed more. This book essentially is a very big comment on the publishing industry and how cutthroat it is. It's also just a huge comment on authors and who should write what. Specifically, white authors writing like people of color, or people of color writing white heroines, or whatever. And that's what I predominantly got from the book, but in the acknowledgements, R.F. Kuang actually writes that the book is more about loneliness and the desire to be recognized and the great lengths that one will go to be remembered or recognized. Overall, this was just a very greatly written book. The author does a really good job of making you kind of not really root for any one specific character, because on one hand, June is a white author who is writing about something that she's not as familiar with as a Chinese author would be, but also Athena wasn't Chinese as well, which raises the big question of the book of who should write what. Athena is also just written as a very stuck up, I don't know, Shakespeare of her time. Like, she's very kind, but also kind of stuck up. So overall, very different than anything I've ever read. I think it was a great book. I think it won a lot of awards. I know R.F. Kuang is a huge author in the space. I think she's wrote Babel, and I kind of really want to read that after this because this was just such an interesting book to read. I loved the comments that she was making. I know a lot of people think that she inserted herself a little bit too much into the book, but overall, I just thought it was very interesting and super fun to read. Like, I feel like it can be such a mundane comment to talk about, but she did it in such a great way with the death of Athena right off the bat and the stealing of a book. Like, that's literally crazy, but it was literally so good. Yeah, those were the 10 books that I read in July. I hope you guys found a new book recommendation, maybe something you want to read, maybe something you didn't agree on with me, which is awesome. I love when people have different opinions than me, or even the same opinions as me. It's just so fun that everyone can read the same book and get a different opinion out of it. Let me know if you liked this video. I hope you did, and I'll see you in the next one, hopefully. Bye.